Welcome to Benison. We're proud of the new partnership that we have with WTA, and as a result, we've given you the shop. Other than the work that we're doing with manufacturers and trade accounts, you guys are the only public that we're engaged with. So we're trying to create, or recreate, I should say, an environment here that's in more support to what you guys are trying to do in sales. So we're going to share some tips for you to pay attention to, and hopefully help deliver a competitive advantage, effectively eliminating any buyer's barrier of entry you encounter. Hey guys, we wanted to give you a little information on what to pay attention to and what to stay away from our perspective, from the shop's perspective. The first one is the condition of the exterior of the watch, right? The case parts, the scratches. You guys have got to realize if there are deep scratches, deep grooves, they're not going to come out with a basic polish. Anything that affects the lines of the watch at all, be careful of, because it's watchmaking heresy to try to repair those lines. Yes, you can do laser soldering. Yep, that's possible, but there are limits to it, especially with the type of timepieces that you guys are working with. This is one in particular. It's a phenomenal watch. Hublot did a hell of a job with this watch. Look at the angles in it. This is going to be one of the most difficult watches to keep in shape if any of the lines are damaged or any of the lines are in question because of scratches in it. Pay attention to that. Surface stuff, again, very, very easy, but anything deep or anything that needs a line correction, just know that the watch is not going to be perfect. Another thing to pay attention to, or another thing to be aware of, are bracelets. We get calls all the time for either rubber strap replacements, links, all of these different things. You guys have to remember you're owners of these watches. So you're able to call the manufacturer up yourself and get all of those things at their cost directly sent to you. Then just bring it into any old watchmaker. They'll be able to put it on for you. That's easy. The final thing I wanted to talk about is the timing of these watches. I know you guys use all kinds of different methods and all kinds of different equipment and machines to come up with timing and the readout of the performance of how these watches are doing, right? So two things. I wanted to go over the equipment that you're using. I wanted to go over the readouts that they're giving you and give you an understanding of what all of those numbers are meaning to you. You have three dominant numbers whenever you're paying attention to how a movement is performing. You have beat rate, you have beat error, and you have amplitude. Two of those numbers give you a state of the movement. The third tells you how that movement is actually performing. Rate, which you guys are probably very much aware of, is what you're gaining or losing per day, right? That's easy. That's no big deal. Don't pay too much attention to it. I know a lot of guys are talking about, oh, this watch might be +8, +9, +10. That doesn't necessarily matter, because when we're giving you a presentation of that watch in that one position, it's very superficial. In reality, the correct way of doing it with the correct equipment is over a 36-hour period in every possible configuration of that timepiece, averaging out all of them to come up with that time. So you may be looking at something that says +9, but what about in other position? What about dial down? It might be -11, right? So you don't know. So if it's within reason, you're fine, you're okay. The beat error is a fascinating number to pay attention to, because it talks about the poise and the alignment of the watch, or of the movement inside the watch. The beat error gives you how centered everything is. So if you have an elevated beat error, then you're looking at a watch that either had a trauma, or you're looking at a watch that perhaps one of the teeth on one of the wheels isn't quite perfect, but there's something that's preventing a perfect center poise in between those two pallet forks. Again, it's not the end of the world. Usually what I always tell people is usually the bigger the problem, the easier the fix, right? So if it's a big beat error, it's not the end of the world. Here's the number to pay attention to: amplitude. That's going to be your greatest ability to get a snapshot of the current state of that watch. The amplitude is a rotational measurement of that pallet and the balance on the inside of the watch, the thing that we see spinning inside the watch, what we call the heartbeat of the watch. Each individual caliber has its own exacting tolerance, but generally speaking, you want it to be between maybe 280 and the low 300s, 310, 315, something like that, because it's telling you that it's moving enough to power the watch without overbanking. If that number comes down, logically speaking, think through it, if that number comes down, then the engine isn't performing as free as it should be. Perhaps the mechanism is beginning to dry up. Perhaps the mainspring has lost its strength to create a good torque out of the gate, but there's something that's not allowing that engine to breathe freely. The amplitude is also a reflection of all of the components of that watch performing as one solid unit. So looking at that amplitude, if that amplitude is good and that amplitude is solid, then every component of that watch is behaving properly in the way that it should. And the only reason at that point in time, if you have a perfect amplitude to service a watch, is if it's been greater than 5 years. But that's the number to pay attention to. Forget rate, forget error. They're very misleading and they don't tell you an awful lot. They're also very, very easy. Amplitude is the number to pay attention to on whether or not this watch needs a service or not. All right, so we're hoping to give you these little bit of tips that's going to help you predict what you're going to have to do after you buy a watch to get it into the condition that you want before selling it. Hope it helps, and we'd like to do a few more from time to time. All right, guys, so this is why we're here, to help identify some of the challenges that you might be facing in sales and to see what we can do here in service to help eliminate or at least greatly reduce those challenges. We're giving you the opportunity to display the professionalism of a fully documented watch. The state of its performance, the state of its water resistance, the casing integrity of it, the fact that it's all genuine and correct to original manufacturer specification, all supported by photography. Photography that's shareable, that's downloadable, and usable however you'd like. One of the things that we want to do for you is give you the ability to deliver a timepiece to your customer that all they have to do is put on their wrist and wear it. There's no question as to previous service intervals. There's no putting the watch on a wrist and having it break in 3 months. There's no wondering whether or not everything is correct about it before wiring you the money. We're eliminating all of it. And I want to continue to work with you to hear what you need so that we can continue to create and evolve in that direction. So I want to stay fully engaged. I want you to check out that timepiece presentation service that we made exactly for you. And I want to keep this dialogue going so that we can continue to create these things that are going to give you the tools that you need to close these sales. Everywhere I have looked online, and I've looked everywhere, I have never seen anyone that is doing this with regularity on every timepiece that they're doing. Yes, it costs a little bit of money, a few $100, something like that. But look at what you're giving your client. Look at what you're giving your customer. Add it on to the sales price, for heaven's sakes, because what you're giving them is something that can't be found anywhere else, and you're creating and you're embodying a competitive advantage that's going to give you the customers for life.